Welcome to this deep dive. Today we're going to explore the world of a pretty fascinating modern spiritual teacher. He's known for his thought-provoking ideas, definitely unconventional, sometimes even a little provocative. Our source material is The Madman's Guide to Enlightenment, which is a collection of excerpts from this book where this teacher is answering questions and concerns from his followers. So get ready for some paradoxes, challenges to conventional thinking, and maybe even a little bit of a mind-bending experience.
You know what's striking about these excerpts is how direct this teacher is, and also just how unconventional his approach is. He's not afraid to kind of turn traditional thinking upside down.
Yeah, he really dives right in. From the get-go, he's talking about witnessing and non-identification. It's like he's saying we should try to be observers of our own minds and our emotions, not get swept away by them.
Right. He uses an analogy about watching anger pass like a cloud, emphasizing non-judgmental awareness. And it's really about recognizing that we're not our thoughts or emotions, but rather we're the awareness that is experiencing them.
And there's an example where a follower is struggling with shyness, and instead of addressing the shyness directly, the teacher guides him to look deeper. He's like, look at the ego as the root cause.
Yeah.
It's a pretty fascinating approach.
It connects with, the idea of mindfulness practices that are so popular now. By cultivating this sort of detached awareness, we can reduce reactivity and create more inner peace.
Okay, this is where things get really interesting. He talks about this difference between divine madness and ordinary madness, and he even says that the psychoanalysts are the neurotic ones, not the people experiencing divine madness.
Yeah, he's suggesting that divine madness actually comes from transcending the mind. And this can be achieved through persistent witnessing and disidentification, ultimately leading to a state of no mind. And ordinary madness, he says, is being trapped by the thoughts and those limiting beliefs.
It makes you think about that line between mental health and spiritual awakening and how important it is to use discernment when you're navigating these ideas. And another thing he really emphasizes is authenticity. He's always talking about the importance of living in an authentic way, instead of just going through the motions or upholding societal expectations that don't really resonate with you.
Right, and he uses this really powerful image to illustrate the point. He compares hypocrisy to presenting a withered flower as if it's still alive. It speaks to how we sometimes try to cling to an image or a past version of ourselves, even when it no longer reflects who we are. So true. It makes you think about all the pressure we face to present a perfect version of ourselves, especially in the age of social media. And it makes you wonder, where do we draw that line between, social harmony and staying true to ourselves? Okay, now this might surprise you. He even talks about left-handedness. He encourages a left-handed follower to embrace their natural inclination despite societal pressure to conform, and he even connects this to the oppression of minorities and criticizes the forced conversion of left-handed children to right-handedness.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's a surprising connection for sure, but it highlights how carefully he observes societal conditioning. He links hand dominance to brain function and suggests that forcing a child to write with their right hand when they're naturally left-handed might have deeper implications than we realize. It makes you think about all the subtle ways that we're conditioned from a young age, and how those early experiences can shape our perceptions of ourselves and the world. One of the things that really stood out to me was his emphasis on embracing the unknown, even when it feels scary. He acknowledges the fear and the confusion that come with leaving behind the familiar and stepping into uncharted territory.
Yeah. He even encourages a follower who's feeling hesitant to go back to his old life, even if it feels uncomfortable. He says it's a chance to experience the futility of clinging to the past and to gain wisdom from that direct experience.
It's like he's saying you got to choose between the security of a boring routine and the thrill of an adventure. It reminds me of times when I've taken a leap of faith and faced those fears head on. The rewards, they might not be immediate, but there's a definite sense of growth and freedom that comes with stepping outside your comfort zone.
He also addresses the difference between evolution and revolution in consciousness, and he uses this to explain why a follower might be feeling overwhelmed by rapid changes. He compares those transformations to quantum leaps, a sudden discontinuity with the old way of being.
Yeah, he uses that analogy of gradually heating water versus bringing it to a boil, where the transformation happens so suddenly and it's irreversible. Such a powerful image.
It really does make you think about your own pace of transformation. Some people are more comfortable with slow and steady growth, while others, they seek those intense breakthroughs that completely shift their reality.
There's no right or wrong way, right? It's all about honoring your own needs and preferences as you go on this journey of self-discovery. And this teacher, he's all about exploring different approaches. For instance, he encourages a follower with artistic hands to explore meditation through spontaneous hand movements, and he even says that it might be more effective than other active meditation techniques.
Well, there are different schools of thought on this. Some believe that spontaneous movement can help release blockages, and it makes meditation deeper because the body's energy can flow more freely. It's like dancing without any choreography, just letting the body move intuitively.
He even says things that make you question reality, like he claims that everything is unreal. And he uses the example of a wall that seems solid, but it's actually made up of these fast-moving electrons that are ultimately just waves of energy.
He's challenging our perception of the material world. He points out that what we see as solid is actually in constant motion on a microscopic level. If we think about the bigger picture, this aligns with our scientific understanding of the universe as a vast field of energy.
It's pretty amazing how he blends scientific concepts with spiritual insights. And it makes you wonder, what else are our senses deceiving us about? What's the true nature of reality? Okay, this next concept is super relevant in our digital age. He downplays the importance of physical closeness and emphasizes that deeper connection of being in the heart with someone.
He contrasts this with the superficiality of just being physically close and suggests that true connection transcends space and time. It's about that deeper resonance, regardless of physical distance.
It's so relevant nowadays with the rise of remote work and online relationships. It makes you think about what it really means to be connected with another person. Can you cultivate genuine intimacy without physical presence? It's something to think about. Now let's look at a section where he offers some practical guidance. There's a follower who's struggling with sadness after a relationship ends, and he encourages her to embrace activities that bring her love and joy.
He stresses that love brings a certain perspective that gives meaning to those simple pleasures. And he's not suggesting these as distractions, but as paths to more positive awareness.
So instead of getting lost in sadness, we can actively cultivate joy and love in our lives.
And what brings you joy, that's something really personal,
Yeah.
It could be spending time in nature, connecting with loved ones, creative projects, or even just taking time for self-care. It's all about discovering what really nourishes you.
The teacher also talks about meditation. He describes it as recreating that womb situation, a state of no action and just pure being. But of course, he acknowledges that it's a challenge to quiet the mind.
He offers some really practical advice, like dedicating an hour each day to just sitting silently. He points out all the tricks our minds use to keep us busy, and he emphasizes how important it is to embrace wu-wei non-doing to let the mind settle.
It's like we have to unlearn that need to always be doing something and give ourselves permission to simply be. It's powerful. He also talks about intensity as a catalyst for transformation. He encourages his follower to fully participate in activities and to build that intensity to facilitate a breakthrough into a new way of being.
He compares the process to heating water to that point where it boils and the transformation happens suddenly. It can't be reversed. It's a powerful analogy.
It makes you think about where you might be holding back in life, and are you really fully engaging with the experiences that are available to you? It's like he's saying, step into your full potential.
Yeah.
And then he has this interesting observation about culture. He talks about Japanese followers struggling with their culture's emphasis on discipline and how it clashes with the free-flowing atmosphere of the ashram.
It reminds us about how deeply cultural conditioning impacts personal growth.
Yeah.
He even mentions creating a separate space specifically for Japanese followers to help them transition between those contrasting value systems.
It just highlights those challenges of navigating different perspectives and finding a path that honors both your individual needs and your cultural background.
Yeah, it really makes you think about how we find that balance, honoring our own individual needs and also respecting our cultural background.
For sure. And talking about finding your individual path, he talks about celibacy with a former nun who is now struggling with sexual desire. And his advice is basically embrace natural celibacy if it happens spontaneously, but don't force it. He makes a distinction between that and the forced repression that she experienced in her past.
Yeah, it goes back to listening to your own inner voice and not just conforming to external pressures or expectations.
Right.
The teacher emphasizes over and over again that there's no one right way. It's about finding out what's authentic for you.
Totally.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about how much society's expectations around sexuality, how much they influence our lives, and how important it is to find what feels genuine for you personally. Now get this. He actually encourages a follower to prioritize expanding their consciousness above all else, even relationships.
Whoa, that's a pretty radical perspective. It really challenges the conventional view of romantic relationships.
Right. It's like he's saying they're not the ultimate goal. It raises questions about that balance between personal growth and the importance of having healthy
Yeah.
relationships. Can you really have both, or are there times when you have to choose one over the other?
It's a tough question. There's no simple answer. It often means navigating those difficult emotions and making hard decisions. What's important is that you approach it all with awareness and compassion, for yourself and for the people you're in those relationships with.
I agree. Okay, brace yourself, because this next experience that's described in these excerpts, it's really powerful. The teacher actually guides a female follower through a really intense orgasmic energy experience that she's afraid of.
Oh, wow.
And he emphasizes that profound silence and integration can come after this kind of energy upheaval, and he assures her that he will take care of her. It's a really fascinating dynamic.
It really is, yeah. And it's almost awe-inspiring to witness his ability to guide people through these intense transformations.
Totally. Okay, switching gears a little bit. He also talks about feminine and masculine energy. There's a female follower who is labeled as too masculine in a Tantra group, and the teacher reassures her that her strong, disciplined energy, it's valuable, but it might be better suited for a different style of Tantra practice.
Yeah, the takeaway here is that there are different types of Tantra, and her energy might be more aligned with a more structured approach. It's about understanding your own energy and finding the practices that really resonate with you.
So it's not about suppressing certain qualities, but about understanding how to work with your own unique energy.
Exactly. And this encourages us to explore how feminine and masculine energy shows up in our lives and how to find a balance within ourselves.
He repeatedly emphasizes how important it is to take that first step on your spiritual journey. He compares it to half the journey itself.
He acknowledges the fear of the unknown, but he also emphasizes that thrill that comes with embracing risk.
Yeah, he reminds us that the hardest part is often just getting started. But once you take that first step, momentum builds and the path starts to unfold before you.
It's true.
I can relate to that. I remember how scared I felt when I left my corporate job to pursue writing. It was such a huge leap of faith. But looking back, it was the best decision I ever made. Okay, let's talk about sannyas, which is essentially discipleship. He describes it as going through an identity crisis.
He compares it to knocking down an old building so you can construct a new one in its place. You're dismantling old beliefs and conditioning to allow a new identity to emerge, one that's more aligned with who you truly are.
That sounds both amazing and terrifying. To go on this path, you'd have to be willing to let go of everything you thought you knew about yourself.
Yeah, it's a huge transformation, and it's not for everyone. It requires courage and deep commitment to the process.
Now, the teacher's very clear. He says he can only point the way. He can't actually walk the path for you. He describes sannyas as a gesture of readiness to listen and a commitment from both sides, the disciple and the master.
It's a partnership, but the responsibility for change ultimately lies with the individual. The teacher provides guidance and support, but the real work happens from within.
It's about taking ownership of your spiritual journey, even with a teacher to guide you. What's interesting is that he highlights the value of being alone as a way to discover yourself. There's a follower who struggles with restlessness when he's alone, and the teacher guides him to see the difference between the mind wanting constant activity and the heart's desire to just be.
It's subtle, but it's so important. It's about learning to be at peace with yourself without needing distractions or external stimulation.
And he says that embracing non-doing is essential for letting the mind quiet down so that you can experience a deeper peace.
It's tough to do that in today's world, where we're always on the go, but it can lead to those profound insights and a greater sense of inner freedom. It's all about being able to be present with yourself without needing to fill the space with activity.
I love how he brings playfulness into his teachings. He talks about approaching life with joy and lightness, instead of getting bogged down by seriousness.
He compares that joy of play with how exhausted you can feel when you're always working and striving for perfection. He actually says that playfulness is a path to more bliss.
It reminds us not to take ourselves too seriously. Loosen up a bit and find moments of delight in everyday life.
It's about letting joy arise spontaneously instead of trying to force it. Life becomes more of a dance than a march.
It makes you wonder, where in our lives have we become too rigid? Where could we add a little more playfulness and lightheartedness?
Yeah.
This next part might speak to anyone who's really passionate about their work. He talks about a musician who's feeling burdened by his craft, and the teacher advises him to take a year off.
He suggests that focusing too much on exams and certifications can actually stifle creativity, and block that true essence of artistic expression. It's like the pressure to perform can put out the flame of passion.
It's a good reminder that sometimes you need to step back from the things you love, even if it's just for a little while, to prevent burnout and to rediscover that joy that drew you to it in the first place.
It's about giving yourself permission to rest, recharge, and let inspiration come back naturally instead of trying to force it.
This teacher has a unique take on names.
Yeah.
He explains that a chosen spiritual name isn't just a label. It's a sadhana. It's a practice in itself. It's about self-discovery and embodying the qualities that the name represents.
Right.
He encourages a follower to really live and be their new name and let it shape who they are.
That's interesting.
It makes you think about the power of names and how they influence how we see ourselves and how others see us. It's almost like stepping into a new role and letting that role help you grow.
It is fascinating. It makes you think about the qualities you'd want your name to embody. What kind of energy do you want to bring into the world?
This teacher is full of thought-provoking ideas, like the idea that if you can solve one problem, you basically unlock the key to solving all problems.
It's like he's saying that inside every problem, there's a universal principle you can apply to any challenge.
He even mentions Gurdjieff's teaching about focusing on one characteristic and mastering how to transform it. It makes you think about patterns in our lives. Like, are there challenges that keep popping up, and what can we learn from those experiences that could help us approach things differently in the future?
Right. It's about figuring out those core issues and developing the awareness and skills to deal with them effectively. Instead of feeling like you're stuck in a loop, you can use these recurring challenges to learn and grow.
Okay, here's a passage that really celebrates creative energy. A follower is experiencing this surge of energy, and he's encouraged to channel it creatively instead of suppressing it.
I like that.
And the teacher suggests that he dedicate some time every morning to just free expression, so he can let that energy flow naturally throughout the day.
I love that idea of harnessing energy instead of being afraid of it or trying to control it.
Yeah.
It makes you think about how we can make space for creative outlets in our daily lives, even if it's just for a few minutes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
This teacher is a master of paradoxes. One of the most striking is when he equates love with the absence of fear.
He says that love can only really emerge when fear disappears.
It's powerful.
It is.
It makes you think about how much fear can block us from experiencing love fully.
Right, like the fear of rejection or vulnerability or even intimacy.
And he connects this to the idea of disappearing, where the ego dissolves and a state of non-being allows for a much deeper experience of love to come through.
It's a challenging concept, but it points to the transformative power of letting go of the ego, and allowing yourself to be present in the moment.
Wow, this is deep stuff.
Yeah.
And he keeps going with that theme of paradox. He says that life itself is paradoxical.
Right. He says that true being is found in non-being and fullness comes from emptiness. And he uses this beautiful analogy of a river flowing into fertile land to show how love in its essence creates abundance.
It's like the universe operates on a completely different logic than our limited human minds can understand.
It's humbling. It encourages us to embrace the mystery and paradox of existence. Instead of trying to categorize everything neatly, let's just be amazed by the wonder of it all.
Okay, and here's another teaching that's pretty unconventional. He actually challenges a follower to practice witnessing during lovemaking.
He suggests that this is the hardest form of meditation, but also the most rewarding.
He describes it as tantra, maintaining alertness and awareness, even when you're experiencing intense sexual energy. I have to admit, this one surprised me.
It requires a lot of self-awareness and discipline. You're transforming a physical act into a spiritual experience.
It definitely challenges our usual ideas about sexuality and spirituality.
Definitely. It's not a path for everyone. It requires careful consideration and respect for everyone involved.
Okay, now this next part is even more provocative. He advises a follower to act out an orgasm if it doesn't happen naturally.
He suggests that by staying aware while you're pretending, a genuine transformation can happen for both partners. It's a very specific approach and maybe a little controversial.
It does raise questions. It needs to be approached carefully with a deep understanding of consent and authenticity, and that energetic exchange between people during intimate moments.
It's something to be cautious about, Maybe talk to a trusted guide or therapist before experimenting with this.
Okay, let's shift gears a little bit.
Yeah.
The teacher goes back to his message about approaching life playfully, not being too serious.
He criticizes what he calls Sunday logic, the idea that we have to wait until retirement to really enjoy life.
Right. He's saying don't postpone happiness. Embrace playfulness right now in this moment. Don't wait for a future that might not even happen.
It's like he's saying happiness isn't a destination, it's a state of being.
And it's a call to action, to find those little joys in everyday life. Stop putting off living fully.
And it's about having gratitude and appreciating the little things.
Okay, now he talks about feminine energy, and he encourages a follower to embrace the qualities that the moon represents: receptivity, passivity, and trust.
He compares this to what he sees as the more dominant masculine energy, aggression and force. He says we need more balance between these energies to heal the world's conflicts.
It makes you think about how we can cultivate more receptivity and trust, not just in the world, but in our own lives.
Yeah, it's about finding that balance between taking action and allowing things to just unfold, between asserting ourselves and surrendering to a greater force. Embracing both the doing and the being parts of ourselves.
His view on seeking God is really interesting. He says that a direct search will always fail, and he recommends an indirect approach through serving others and experiencing the divine through nature and those everyday encounters.
Yeah, he doesn't like that modern tendency to try to have a direct experience of God. He thinks it's impossible and potentially harmful.
It makes you think about all the different ways that people connect with the divine. It's not always about these grand gestures or mystical experiences, but sometimes it's about finding the sacred in the ordinary.
There are so many paths to spiritual awakening. It's important to honor the diversity of those experiences.
Okay, now he focuses on the breath, and he describes it as a bridge between the body and the soul.
He says that watching the breath can help you connect with that deathless presence within us all.
And he even encourages a follower to guide his dying wife in this practice so that she can have a peaceful and conscious death. It's beautiful.
It is. It's a reminder that even in those final moments, we can connect with peace and transcendence.
He challenges the idea of working marriages. He says that most couples are just hiding their unhappiness and pain behind this mask of normalcy.
It's like he's saying they sacrifice the present moment for some future hope, and they stay in the relationship out of duty, not genuine connection.
It's a bold statement that makes us look at our own relationships. Are we truly connected, or are we just holding on out of habit or fear?
It's a good question to ask.
He talks about living in the present moment and how life becomes so vibrant and full of light when you let go of the past and the future.
He equates the state of being present with grace, like miracles are unfolding.
Now, let's look at his teaching about spontaneity and bliss. He says that you can't manufacture happiness. It arises from being receptive and passive. Just allowing things to be.
It's interesting.
He encourages a more quiet, feminine approach to life, letting things unfold naturally without forcing or controlling.
It's like he's saying sometimes we just need to let go of the reins and let life surprise us.
I like how he uses stories to illustrate his teachings. He tells a story about a follower who was bored with his routine Zen practices, and that boredom actually led to a sudden breakthrough in consciousness.
He's saying that being totally bored with your life can actually be a catalyst for transformation.
It makes you think about where you might be stuck in a rut, and whether shaking things up could lead to something more fulfilling.
Right. It's about going beyond your comfort zone and being open to something new. Sometimes discomfort is what you need to grow.
He also emphasizes the limitations of the mind. He says that true reality exists beyond thinking and dreaming.
He encourages a follower to go beyond thought and experience the truth of their being directly.
It's about tapping into a deeper level of awareness that isn't limited by thoughts and perceptions.
Exactly. It's about finding that intuitive wisdom that we all have inside.
He compares the calculating mind, which is driven by fear, with the trusting heart, which doesn't calculate. He connects this to love poetry and authentic religious experience.
It's beautiful.
It is. And he says that true intelligence is choosing to trust rather than doubt.
It's a great reminder that fear can cloud our judgment and stop us from really experiencing life.
He acknowledges that his presence and his teachings, they create this urgency for people to trust and transform. And that can be difficult for some.
He actually advises a follower who's struggling with trust to leave the ashram for a bit, to get some perspective and let things unfold naturally.
He's saying that spiritual awakening happens at its own pace.
There's no need to rush it. Sometimes taking a step back is the best way to move forward.
He talks about the power of consciousness and how just being aware can help us heal psychological problems.
Right. He connects this to the spiritual idea of non-identification. So as you become more aware, you can let go of negative emotions and become whole.
It's such a hopeful message. We have the power to heal from within.
It's true. Recognizing the power of our minds and the transformative potential of awareness.
He reassures a follower who feels guilty about enjoying material things that there's nothing wrong with it. He says it's actually a necessary part of the journey to transcendence.
Interesting.
He says that a truly spiritual person embraces the world before moving beyond it.
It's about integrating our spiritual lives and our material lives instead of seeing them as separate.
Finding the sacred in the everyday and recognizing how everything is connected.
Beautiful.
Okay, so he clarifies that the ultimate goal on the spiritual path is to dismantle the ego. He says that anything that makes the ego stronger actually becomes an obstacle to growth.
So he encourages a follower to let success and abundance flow through them without clinging to it or identifying with it.
It's about letting go of the need to control and surrendering to something bigger than ourselves.
And recognizing that true worth comes from within, not from external validation or what you own.
He really emphasizes the importance of individual inquiry, especially in religion.
He compares this to blind faith and the dangers of organized religion. He's encouraging us to question things, to explore and find what resonates with us personally.
It's about taking ownership of your spiritual beliefs and finding what feels true to you.
Going beyond dogma and embracing the mystery of what we don't know.
Okay, so he defines non-identification as the core of true religion. He says that identifying with the world makes you worldly, but not identifying with it brings you closer to God.
It's powerful.
And he encourages us to watch our emotions and thoughts without judgment, just letting them come and go without getting attached.
Right, cultivating a sense of detachment, recognizing that you are not your thoughts or emotions.
Exactly. It's about finding that spacious awareness that exists beyond the chatter of the mind.
It's beautiful. He also encourages us to live each moment with complete presence and immersion. He says even the simplest actions can become profound experiences if we approach them with awareness.
He uses examples like walking, taking a shower, even cleaning, to show how powerful mindfulness can be in everyday life.
It's about finding joy and purpose in everything we do.
And recognizing that every moment is a chance to connect with something sacred.
Okay, so he challenges this belief that the world exists just to fulfill our needs. He says this comes from being cared for by our parents when we're children.
Interesting.
He encourages us to be grateful for every act of kindness and to recognize that others aren't obligated to meet our expectations. It's about becoming self-sufficient and appreciating others for who they are, not for what they can do for us.
Moving from entitlement to gratitude and appreciation.
He advocates for a love that's free from expectations. He says expectations kill joy and create conflict in relationships.
He encourages us to come to relationships with an open heart and accept people for who they are. And he even says we should be willing to let go of a partner who wants to leave. He emphasizes that freedom that comes from not clinging to them. He believes that greater love can happen when both people feel respected and free.
It's about recognizing that real love doesn't need possession or dependence.
It's about trusting that love can exist without trying to control the other person.
It's about letting go of our fears and insecurities and letting love flow freely.
This teacher offers some great practical advice, too. He gives a simple routine for getting a good night's sleep. Dancing a warm bath, warm milk, and focusing on your breath.
He says that paying attention to the rhythm of your breath can help you calm your mind and fall asleep naturally. Simple, but effective.
Yeah, it's a reminder that taking care of your body is important for spiritual growth.
Honoring that connection between mind, body, and spirit.
He also talks about understanding those unconscious needs. He helps a follower see how his jealousy of his daughter is actually reflecting a need for more motherly love from his wife.
He encourages them to talk openly about their needs and find playful ways to fulfill them.
It's about honesty with ourselves and our partners, and finding healthy ways to meet our emotional needs.
And building relationships based on mutual respect, understanding, and support.
This teacher really emphasizes the importance of freedom.
He compares this to the rigid beliefs that people often have when they're born into a religion. He encourages us to question things and find our own path.
It's a reminder that true freedom comes from within.
Owning your beliefs and living in a way that aligns with your values.
He gives a really simple but powerful technique for dealing with anger.
Okay.
Instead of saying, I am angry, he suggests saying, anger is there I am watching it.
Interesting.
He emphasizes that the key to breaking free from the grip of our emotions is to not identify with them. That's how you achieve liberation.
It's a powerful reminder that we're not our emotions. We have the power to choose how we respond to them.
It's about cultivating awareness and developing healthy ways to cope.
Creating space between yourself and your emotions so you can respond with wisdom and compassion.
And finally, he reminds us to bring our full presence to every single action.
He says that even ordinary tasks can become meditative experiences if you approach them with awareness and intention.
So fully engage with what you're doing and let each action be a source of joy and fulfillment.
Find meaning and purpose in every moment.
Live a life that's fully alive and awake.
Embrace the journey and see the inherent beauty and perfection in everything.
After exploring all these different teachings, I feel like we've barely scratched the surface. There's so much to unpack here.
It really is the kind of book you could read over and over again and discover something new each time.
Yeah. One of the things that stuck with me is this whole idea of dismantling the ego as like a crucial part of spiritual growth. He says that anything that strengthens your ego actually becomes a roadblock on the path.
Yeah, it's a tough concept to wrap your head around, especially in a society that places so much emphasis on achievements and what you own.
Oh.
But he's really pointing to a deeper shift, moving away from that focus on the I and recognizing something bigger than ourselves.
So it's not about denying our desires or successes, but about not getting too attached to them. Realizing they don't define who we are at our core.
Right, letting them flow through us without clinging or grasping. He's talking about detachment, not as a way to reject the world, but as a way to find freedom from the suffering that comes from holding on too tightly.
I'm also fascinated by his focus on non-identification. He actually calls it the essence of true religion. He says that identifying with the world makes you worldly, but non-identification leads to a state of being in God.
It's a profound idea. It makes you think about how caught up we get in the stories we create about ourselves and the world. We become so identified with our thoughts and emotions, and they end up causing us so much pain.
Yeah, it's like we're trapped in this constant drama in our minds, believing every thought that pops up as if it's the absolute truth.
And he's suggesting that by practicing non-identification, we can start to see those thoughts and emotions for what they really are, just passing experiences that don't define us.
It's about creating space between ourselves and those thoughts, so we don't get swept away by them.
He's encouraging us to observe our own minds, cultivate a sense of peace and stillness amidst the chaos of our thoughts and feelings.
Another thing that really resonated with me was his encouragement of individual inquiry, especially when it comes to religion. He seems to be cautioning against blind faith and, the potential downsides of organized religion.
It seems like he's advocating for a more personal and authentic approach to spirituality. A journey of self-discovery guided by your own inner wisdom.
So it's about questioning, exploring, and finding what feels true for you instead of just accepting what you've been told.
Right. He's not afraid to challenge the norm, and he encourages his followers to do the same. It's about embracing the mystery of the unknown and trusting the unfolding of your own unique path.
After going through all of this, I'm left with this sense of awe, but also a little bit of overwhelm. These teachings are so profound, but I'm not always sure how to actually put them into practice in my daily life.
I get that. These are not easy concepts to grasp, and it takes time and effort to fully integrate them. But I think the key is to approach it all with a sense of curiosity and, a willingness to be challenged.
So maybe instead of getting caught up in trying to figure it all out, we should just trust the process and allow ourselves to be transformed by the journey itself.
Exactly. Letting go of the need to control and surrendering to the unfolding of your own path.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from the Madman's Guide to Enlightenment, from the nature of reality to the importance of self-discovery. What are your final thoughts on this teacher and his unique approach?
I think he's a really remarkable person, someone who's not afraid to push the boundaries and challenge us to expand our consciousness. His teachings are this powerful call to question everything, embrace paradox, and live a life that's fully present and awake.
I agree. And I think his emphasis on taking responsibility for yourself, questioning things, and living in the present moment, those are really important messages today, especially in a world that feels so chaotic and overwhelming. He's giving us tools to find peace and joy and meaning amidst all the challenges we face.
His teachings offer a path to freedom, freedom from limiting beliefs, from the grip of the ego, and from the suffering that comes with clinging to impermanence.
Before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a question to think about. The teacher talks about divine madness as a state of transcendence that you can reach through witnessing and disidentification, leading to that no-mind state. But how can we tell if we're truly experiencing this divine madness or if we're just losing touch with reality? It's a question worth exploring on your own spiritual journey.
It is. And remember, there's no one right answer. The important thing is to stay curious, stay open, and trust your own inner guidance.
Thanks for joining us for this exploration of the Madman's Guide to Enlightenment. We hope it sparked your curiosity and inspired you to keep exploring the depths of your own being. Until next time, keep diving deep